Cashflow Ninja, Episode 1 with Tom Corley.
Welcome to the Cashflow Ninja, the podcast empowering and inspiring people to discover how to generate their own income and manage, grow, and protect their own wealth in the new economy. Now, here is your host, MC Laubscher.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 1 of the Cashflow Ninja. We have a very intriguing and interesting show for you. I've always been amazed that if there truly is only a handful of successful and wealthy individuals, why do we follow the advice and the path that the majority of people follow that are not successful and wealthy? If you want to be successful and wealthy, you have to do what the successful and wealthy people do. Tony Robbins has said that success leaves clues. There's a blueprint. Aristotle was also quoted as saying, "We are what we repeatedly do." And our daily habits are the little things we do every day that create our lives and determine the quality of the lives that we live. So what do successful and wealthy people do on a daily basis? My guest today is Tom Corley, the author of Amazon's #1 best-selling book, Rich Habits, The Daily Success Habits of Wealthy Individuals. Tom studied for over 5 years the daily activities of wealthy and poor people and discovered that there's a difference the size of the Grand Canyon between the daily habits of the wealthy and the poor. Tom Corley is a best-selling author, CPA, certified financial planner, and holds a master's degree in taxation. He's also president of Serapis & Company, CPAs, one of the top financial firms in New Jersey, and the CEO of the Rich Habits Institute. Tom has shared his insights on over 1,000 radio shows and has been featured in many prominent print and internet sites such as CNN.com, Huffington Post, and Success Magazine. Tom's Success Magazine article is packed with value, and I will share a link to the article in today's show notes. Tom's also been seen on many TV shows, including CBS Nightly News. The lessons that Tom will share today will be life-changing, and you will be able to use them right away and see instant results. Just a reminder that you can find all of our past shows, show notes, recommended resources, and join our community at cashflowninja.com. We will post today's show notes at cashflowninja.com/001 with all the links to the resources discussed during today's episode. During the first 2 months of our podcast, we're giving away a $500 Visa gift card. All you have to do to get entered into the drawing is go to cashflowninja.com/iTunes and rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. If you feel that our show has provided valuable content and information, please share it with family, friends, and anyone that you feel will enjoy it.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire, and you're listening to the Cashflow Ninja podcast with your host, MC Laubscher. You must be prepared to ignite.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Can you please share a little bit about your background and your journey through the accounting and financial service industries and how this led to the writing of Rich Habits, the Daily Success Habits of Wealthy Individuals?
I'm a CPA, a certified public accountant. I'm also a certified financial planner. I have a master's in tax, and I've spent most of my career in tax, helping people try and plan for their taxes, mostly large corporations, but the last 10 years it's been focused on individuals and small businesses. And one of the small businesses is the reason why I even embarked on this Rich Habits research. When I took over as president of my company here, my CPA firm, one of the small business clients of ours demanded to see me one night. And so we met late one night, and his bank had termed his line of credit. They converted it to a term loan, and they shut it down, basically. So he had no money to meet payroll that Friday, so he wanted to meet with me and see if I had any magic up my sleeve to get him the money that he needed. And I didn't. Nobody could in such short notice. And he broke down and started crying. And he said, I've got all these families that they're not going to get their payroll checks this Friday. And he was in business for 25 years. His father ran the business, handed it over to him. And anyway, he had gotten divorced. And over the course of, it was about 15 years, his business started to just run into small losses every year. Every year was a small loss, about 15 to 20,000 a year. And he used lines of credit to be able to meet his expenses. And eventually that just caught up with him. And so, that's why he was there meeting with me. And he just looked at me and he said, well, what am I doing wrong? What are your successful clients doing that I'm not doing? And it was such an emotional plea. It hit me, in my emotions. And so I started looking at research that was out there on successful people, and I found Dr. Thomas Stanley's The Millionaire Next Door. I thought that was good, but it didn't really go far enough. It certainly didn't talk about what people were doing wrong. So I ended up doing my own research. I came up with something called my 20 question list, which is really 154 questions, I think, that I asked 233 wealthy people and 128 poor people. Then I documented their responses, summarized them into something I call my research summary. And when I was done analyzing everything, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. I said, my gosh, most of the differences between the rich group and the poor group is their daily habits. And I would have never thought of that. Something so small as a daily habit could have such a significant impact on your life, but it does. And it's an accumulation of good habits and bad habits that we have that either make us or break us. So, at some point, somebody who I was training suggested that I write a book because they were having enormous success with the rich habits. And so that's what I did. And I'd never written a book before in my life. So that was so outside my comfort zone, you can't imagine,
Can you share some of the habits that separate the rich and the wealthy from the poor that you came across?
One of the big ones is I found that the rich people, particularly the self-made millionaires, and there were, out of the 233 millionaires, 177 of them were self-made. 31% came from poverty and the rest came from the middle class. One of the main habits that they had that was different from poor people was they read to learn every single day. On average, about 20 to 30 minutes a day devoted to reading something that would help give them knowledge, for the most part, in what they were doing in their careers. But not all the time. Sometimes it was outside their careers and they just became students of life and they wanted to know everything they could. And so they devoted time every single day. The other thing was building relationships. This was another huge difference between the rich and the poor. The wealthy people were fanatics when it came to building relationships with other like-minded individuals. And by like-minded, I mean successful-minded individuals. So they tried to surround themselves with something I call rich relationships. And then they tried to separate themselves from toxic relationships. These are the relationships with negative people who have all sorts of issues and problems. And if they're friends of yours, they drag you into their little world of problems. And they also have an effect on your mindset. They can turn you within 5 minutes from positive to negative. So you really want to avoid associating with these toxic people. And wealthy people figured that out. They said, if I'm going to be successful, I've got to surround myself with the right people. And so that's what they did. Another thing that they were doing was, part of building relationships with these like-minded people was volunteering or networking. A lot of them were on board of directors or headed committees for nonprofit groups, and they were also in business groups. They were, on the board's treasurer, president, running those business groups and networking with people. And so they were building relationships. In fact, I took a page out of their book and I started doing that myself back in, about 2008 or 2009. And I've probably picked up 5 really big business clients as a result of that have helped improve my life. So I know this stuff works. I see it work with my life, and I know it's working because I get emails and tweets and Facebooks from people that are having success. So those are 3 really big habits. Probably a 4th, I'll just throw this one in because it's kind of out there. People wouldn't expect it, and that is wealthy people in my study exercise almost every day, at a minimum 4 days a week, 30 minutes a day. And a big chunk of that was cardio. And it was interesting because I almost dismissed that as unrelated to success until I started working on a book called Rich Thinking. And I had to get into neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, and how the brain works. And I found out, to my surprise, that cardio exercise feeds the brain with oxygen. Oxygen and glucose are the main fuels of the brain. So if you're taking in more oxygen, your brain is healthier. And you're thinking clearer. Just think about it. If you're going without food, you get weak. Well, the brain's the same way. If you exercise, you're feeding the brain food that it desperately needs. It uses up 20% of the oxygen in the body. So when you exercise aerobically, you're overwhelmingly supplying the body and the brain with oxygen. In fact, maybe even too much oxygen, but that's not a bad thing. The brain grows. It creates new synapses. It grows new brain cells when it's being fed. So exercise is like miracle grow for the brain.
Tom, those are great points. I've made health a priority this year personally, and I've seen the benefits of exercise first thing in the morning, especially aerobic exercise. I also just want to emphasize the point that you made that wealthy people engage in everyday studying and reading. I've heard the saying that poor people have big television sets and wealthy people have big libraries. The other big takeaway for me here is the importance that wealthy people place on establishing and building relationships. Wealthy people have a mindset that their net worth is tied to their net work. And we have so many opportunities today to meet peers and like-minded people networking online through sites like LinkedIn, Meetup, and many other platforms. I will put some links to these platforms in today's show notes. What would you say is one really bad habit that keeps people poor and their families poor?
It's a combination of two things. It's the negative mindset and limiting beliefs. So people, you can understand this. I grew up, we were rich and then we were poor. And I can tell you when we were rich, the world was our oyster. That was at least the mindset in my family. And when we were poor, all the blemishes of the world seemed to become, mountains. They were self-evident and we became negative, and it fed into our poverty. It didn't help us. So I found in my research that by far poor people have a negative mental outlook. And they hold on to all of these negative beliefs. And one of them is that, they're kind of victims of life. And as a result of being victims, there really should be people out there helping. So they have this sense that they're entitled to help from other people, mainly rich people. And so I think when you're poor, it's very easy to believe that rich people are bad, evil people, and that the only good people in the world are poor people. And that's a really bad thing, because what you're really doing is programming your brain through that limiting belief that wealth is bad. And of course, if you believe wealth is bad, you're going to be poor. You're never going to be rich. So I just think that those two are really the things that hold most of the poor people back.
Could you walk us through a typical day of a poor person?
Yeah, it's a very boring day. I will tell you that much. They usually get up in the morning, not very early. Just enough time where they can get dressed, eat, get something to eat, a cup of coffee or whatever, and start their commute to work. And then when they get into work, they usually they like to gossip. And gossip, it's mostly a negative thing, but oftentimes it's about other people at work, other family members, other friends, or it could be about the game last night, the sports game. And, let's face it, you want to have conversations with people at work, but there's a time and a place for that. And when you get into the office and you spend 15, 20 minutes talking with somebody about some person you don't like, or some game that was on last night, or some show, some TV show, it's a waste of time. It's just a complete waste of time. You'd be better off just sitting at your desk and reading for 15 minutes, something that will help you, do a better job. But it's a habit. So they have this habit of doing the gossiping with other people at work. And they also have a habit of checking their email and their voicemail continuously. Now, when I talk to the poor people about this, they said, well, I want to be responsive. I was shocked because what I found with the rich people was that they blocked off email and voicemail time. They didn't check their emails and their voicemails sometimes for hours until later in the morning. And then they do the same thing in the afternoon. So they would block off time for email and voicemail, and they would then respond in that block of time to the email and the voicemail. And then they'd get back to work. Poor people were constantly multitasking, checking voicemail, checking email, doing work. And it's so inefficient because there's no such thing as multitasking. The only part of the brain that can multitask is what I call the old brain. That's the limbic system and the brainstem. It can multitask because it's been around for millions of years. It can make your heart beat. It can allow you to breathe. It can do it all simultaneously. The new brain, which is our neocortex, which has only been around for a couple of 100,000 years, it can't multitask. And when we're working with our new brain. So when people talk about, oh yeah, I'm really good at multitasking, my wife tells me that all the time. And I tell her, you don't understand. There's no such thing as multitasking on a conscious level. You can't do it. And so what happens is they move from one thing, a bunch of neurons shift from doing one thing, and now they shift to another thing. It's sucking up all this brain energy, making you tired. This multitasking just wears you out. And plus, it takes time to refocus on whatever it is that you were doing before you decided to check your email or your voicemail. So this is kind of what they do during the morning. And then when they go to lunch, they usually are eating lunch at their desk or with some colleagues, and they're gossiping, of course, and they're talking and whatever they might be doing. And then they get back to the office and they kind of have the same routine. And in an honest day work, they're probably getting in 4 solid hours, these poor people. And so the ones that get rewarded are not the poor people. The ones that get rewarded are the ones that are single-mindedly focused in getting 10 hours out of an 8-hour day, you know?
I've noticed that successful people really focus and they don't multitask. They focus all of their time, energy, and resources into one task, and when they complete it, they move on to the next task. Now, let's contrast that. Would you walk us through a typical day of a wealthy person?
Sure. Well, almost 50% of them wake up 3 hours or more before they actually start working, whatever they do for a living. And the interesting thing is what they do with that 3 hours. They're doing things that are related to some passion that they're pursuing. They might be studying because they're going to school at night, or they're studying for a new license or a new accreditation. They might be preparing for a speaking engagement. They might be doing work that they need to do for some nonprofit group or business group that they're running. They are always, it seems, 88% of them are doing some aerobic exercise, some type of exercise in the morning. At least 30 minutes a day, 4 days a week, they're doing that. They also use that time to plan their day. They're creating their to-do list, and they're creating their to-don't list, things they want to do and things they don't want to do. It's equally important to have a to-don't list as it is to have a to-do list. You want to make sure that you have a to-don't list because the to-don't list stops us from engaging in bad habits. And so they have these tools that they use, that they create in the morning to help them manage their day. And then when they're commuting to work, they're typically listening to audiobooks. Now podcasts are the big rage. They might be reading a book if they're, sitting on a train or a bus. They're certainly not listening to talk radio like the poor people do when they're commuting. And then when they get to their office, they attack their to-do list. The first 2.5 hours of their day are just pure productivity. There's almost isolate themselves to be focused. Now, when at some point in time in the morning, usually late morning, that's when they start looking at their email and their voicemail and then responding to that. And that could, it typically takes them about an hour and a half. And then instead of them just going out to lunch and eating something or sitting in their car or, sitting with colleagues, almost 60% of the time they're networking. So that they're out with somebody. Now, it doesn't have to be a client, doesn't have to be a customer, but it could be somebody that they just want to hang around with who's success-minded, who they like. And if they're not doing that, a percentage of them, about 22%, are doing speaking engagements or actual formal networking at lunch. So lunch is a productive use of their time. Then when they're finished with lunch, they're back in the office. They have another, 2.5, 3 hours of solid focus. And then they're back looking at their block of time to check their email and their voicemail. And so, they're finishing up their day, clearing their to-do list. And then, when they commute from wherever they, whether it's car, train, or bus or whatever, they're doing the same thing, listening to audiobooks, podcasts, something inspirational because you're tired at the end of the day. That's a good time to listen to creative, inspirational information or read it. And then, you think, okay, well, then they get home and they have dinner. No, 2 out of the 5 days, they're out doing something like speaking engagements on the board of directors of companies, on the board of directors of nonprofit groups, networking groups. They're coaching teams. They're, volunteering at schools for different purposes to mentor kids. They can be doing any number of things. So about 40% of the week at night is devoted to that kind of stuff. They could be going to school too, or writing like I did. I spent a lot of time at night writing. And they usually get to bed somewhere in the neighborhood between 9:30 and 10:30. And they always try and get about 7 hours of sleep. That seems to be the norm among the wealthy people. The poor people got less than 6 hours of sleep a night. The sleep is very important because sleep does 2 primary things. It helps clean the brain. And when you're in REM, it's cleaning your optic nerve, which Optic nerve is huge in the brain. It takes up 40% of our neurons. So the REM sleep's purpose is to clean the optic nerve and to clean our eyes, and also for long-term potentiation. That's memory. It's consolidating memory between the hypothalamus and the neocortex. It's like an offline loop of whatever it is that you learned that day. Offline, it's consolidating that learning thousands and thousands of times. So REM sleep is critical. You need at least four stages of sleep. It normally takes about 90 minutes to get through each stage. So you've got to have about 7 hours of sleep. That's just the way it is. So, and then they wake up and they're off at it again the next day.
Well, time is definitely the great equalizer. We all have 24 hours in a day. They definitely use their time more productively. Tom, how has your life changed when you consciously started to implement these habits into your life?
Well, it's still changing, but I think one of the things that I realized immediately when I was done with my research was that the wealthy people had multiple streams of income. 65% had 3 streams, 45% had 4 streams, and I can't remember what the percentage is, but it was close to 30% had 5 or more streams of income. So I thought, well, that's something I need to change because I only had 1 stream of income, my CPA firm. So I started building and developing the financial planning practice part of the firm. And so that's actually become a business now. That's a business segment. I don't make a lot of money, but I make a lot more than zero, which is what I was making before in financial planning. So now I have that stream. So I have those 2 streams. I'm going to have 3 books out. And each one of those books is like a product, MC. It's like, you making a widget, building an iPad or something. So I have my Rich Habits, I have my Rich Kids, and I have my Change Your Habits, Change Your Life. That's coming out in 2 weeks. So now I'm going to have 3 additional streams. That's going to be 5 streams. Last year, for the first time, I started to get paid for my speaking engagements. That's 6 streams. And down the road, one of my dreams that I'm going to start to pursue is seminars. Really love to teach, and I love doing seminars. I've done a few of them with the Rich Habits, but I'm going to really turn it into a business segment. So what Rich Habits has done for me is it's taken me from 1 stream of income to 7 streams of income. And they're all investments, MC. So it's going to take time for me to build those business segments. But the royalty part is really going really well on the books. For the most part, I've been a self-published author. That's going to change soon. But I've sold close to 50,000 books, and that puts me in 0.01% of self-published authors in history. Which I didn't know till somebody brought it up to me.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, most self-published authors never sell more than 500 books. Most of that is to friends, families, and people you know. So I'm in rare territory. And the reason I'm not bragging, I found my main purpose in life. It's this Rich Habit stuff. It's teaching this research that is profound to me. And so I'm going to be successful at it because when you find your main purpose in life, when you find that thing you're passionate about, it forces you to be persistent.
Tom, that's very inspiring, and congratulations with the success of the self-published book. It does provide so much value and contains actionable, life-changing information. Another big takeaway here from my audience is the monthly revenue streams that you have developed by pursuing your passion and providing value for others. Through some of the research I've read, the researchers have concluded that billionaires have on average approximately 7 different income sources. Learning how to generate multiple streams of income from different sources in the new economy is what inspired the show, so thank you for sharing that valuable information with us. It's great to see firsthand what's possible when you pursue your passion on a daily basis.
Yeah, and you can pursue it part-time, which is the great thing. Let's face it, most of us come from poverty or the middle class. That's just the way it is in the whole world. And so the only thing you can do is on the side build these income streams, and then eventually you're going to find an income stream that you're really passionate about, and that's when you're going to know you found your main purpose in life, when you just know it, and then you're going to want to pursue it, and it'll grow, and it'll become eventually a full-time business, and you'll become successful and wealthy.
Yeah, that's great advice. Start small, build something, keep your day job, find something that you're passionate about, start building that income stream on the side, and eventually you can see it grow. And as you said, these things take time to build as well. And if you're passionate about it and you believe in it, you'll put the maximum amount of effort and time in, and eventually you'll get the results from it.
Right.
So, Tom, can you offer a few strategies that my audience can implement today to begin making changes in their lives immediately?
Sure. So this will dovetail right into what we were just talking about. You want to make small changes. you can't make wholesale changes. It's impossible to make a wholesale change and then immediately be successful. You have to start small, because when you start small, it's that time period when you're growing by dipping your toe in the water that you learn so many new things, that you're pushing your boundaries. You're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And when you do that, you make mistakes. So you want to start small because you want those mistakes to be small. If you start big, and a lot of people make this mistake, MC, they'll join a startup.
Right.
They'll completely abandon whatever their career is to join a startup. So they dove right in, and they make big mistakes, and almost 90-something% from what I remember back in my startup days, something like 96% of startups fail. So
right.
You're going to fail. 96% of the time, you're going to fail. So you want to start small. And I have something that I found from my research. I call it the 20-minute rule. And here's how it works. You just devote 20 minutes a day to something that you want to build. Whatever it is. If you want to build a website, sell products on the website, 20 minutes a day. If you want to get involved in real estate, start studying real estate and start getting involved in real estate, 20 minutes a day. Every day, day in and day out, like you're brushing your teeth. It has to become a habit. In that 20 minutes of focused time, it's a short enough period of time that you'll be able to your willpower is a muscle. It's a brain muscle, actually. It's part of your neurology. The brain does not like it when you use willpower energy or willpower, because willpower uses up a lot of glucose and oxygen. So the brain shuts you down, and it's usually somewhere in less than an hour, but the sweet spot is around 30 minutes. So if you devote 20 minutes a day to something that you want to pursue or you want to learn or you want to grow at, your brain is not going to put up any resistance. And it might be 20 minutes of just doing aerobic exercise. So, for your health, because it's not all about making money. Sometimes it's about being healthy. Because if, one wealthy person told me in response to my question, why does he work out so much and keep himself so healthy? What's the correlation between wealth and health? And he said, I realized at some point I can't make money sitting in a hospital bed. So he said, I knew that if I could be healthy for my whole life, that the last 5 years of my career, if I was real healthy and energetic, I could make the most money. Because let's face it, the last years of your career is when you know the most and you can make the most money. So that was his mindset. So that 20-minute rule could be applied for any number of things, including taking good care of your health.
Wealthy individuals manage their relationships every day. Strong relationships are the currency of the wealthy. Can you talk about the strategies the wealthy use to establish and grow relationships?
I guess you'd boil it down into 4 strategies. The hello call, the happy birthday call, the life event call, and networking. So the hello call is really a reconnaissance mission. The purpose of that call is to call someone who you want to build a relationship with. It might be a prospect. It might be someone who's successful that you want them to one day mentor you, or you want to get mentored by them. It might be anybody who's important to you. You want to build that relationship. You do that through the hello call, the happy birthday call, and the life event call. The hello call is about gathering information. Where did they go to school? What's the name of their spouse? How many kids do they have? What's the name of their kids? What sports do their kids play? Do they like sports? Do they like to read? You gather as much information about each individual contact as you can, and then you put it into your database, whatever it is, Outlook or a Rolodex if you keep a manual one. But you maintain some type of file system on each one of your contacts that has all of that data. The happy birthday call is a powerful call in this regard. It keeps your relationships on life support. So at the relationships that you want to maintain, at least once a year, you're going to call them on their birthday. And what I found, because I've been doing this for a lot of years, since 2008, when I found out about it through my research, that's when I started doing the happy birthday calls. And I found out that between 20 and 25% of the time, I get something called the reciprocal happy birthday call. The people who I repetitively call on their birthday, after a couple of years, started calling me on my birthday. That takes your relationship off of life support, because now you've got at least 2 times a year that you're talking to one another. And the life event call is the most powerful type of call, because it's a call you make when something happens in somebody's life that's important. The death of a mom, a wedding, birth of a baby, bar mitzvah, baptism, whatever it is. You make a call. I'm saying here call, not send a card, not send a gift, not send flowers. You make a phone call and you say, hey, I just wanted to wish you congratulations on the birth of your new child. That's great. And what'll end up happening is you'll talk 5 minutes and you'll build that relationship. And I've used these things to make money. They work. I had 1 year when I used the Hello Call and the Life Event Call, and I made with one person $60,000. So I know this stuff works. This is real world stuff that wealthy people know what they're doing. So I just took a page out of their book. So, and then the networking is also important in building the relationships. We already talked about that, but those are the 4 strategies that you want to do. And networking, by the way, includes volunteering.
So one habit that I've observed from wealthy and successful people is that they're always studying new subjects and learning new skills. What are you currently studying, and what skill sets are you currently learning?
I'm studying epigenetics right now. That's the ability to alter your genome, your genes. We all have DNA, and inside each cell of our body, inside the nucleus, is our DNA. Well, that DNA can be turned on and off by what we eat, by how we think, and by our experiences in life. It's very much tied into your habits, because your habits can, if you have good habits, they can turn on certain genes that will help you become smarter, increase your IQ. They can make you healthier, and they can turn on your creativity and insight. And I'm also studying the microbiome. There's 10 times the number of bacteria cells in our body as there are normal everyday cells. So we are more bacteria than we are human. And the reason I'm studying the microbiome is I found out that the microbiome is habit-driven. It's what you eat. So if you're eating junk food, like the Western culture here in America, we have probably the worst diet in the world. And it's, McDonald's, Burger King, it's all of these fast food restaurants that a lot of poor people, I found in my study, go to these fast food restaurants 2 or 3 times a week. And the bacteria that you take in is toxic. And it overwhelms your large intestine, and you have all sorts of health issues. It affects your thinking because some of these toxins work their way into the blood, and the blood gets through the blood-brain barrier, and it negatively impairs your brain cells. And there's some research that I'm looking at right now that is saying that they think that Alzheimer's and dementia might be diet-driven, not just genetic. So diet is your microbiome, the bacteria that we take in. And I'm also studying neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. These are the study of the brain, essentially, because it's all related to habits.
That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. What is the best advice that you've ever received, and the biggest lesson that you've learned on your journey to creating multiple streams of income around your passion?
I always thought that wealthy people were wealthy because they became overnight successes. Something happened that changed their lives. They went out on a limb, they took a risk, and whammo, they become super successful. What I found in my research is the exact opposite. Wealth has very little to do with the home runs, and it has everything to do with, hitting singles, MC. It's the little things that you do every day that accumulate like snowflakes on a mountainside. I love that metaphor because it's true. So you do these little things, you get these little base hits every day by having good habits, and they're like snowflakes. They build up on the mountainside. You don't notice the accumulation. And then, one day they have an effect. They have an avalanche. And it might be something big that happens in your life, but it's not something big that happens overnight. It's over the course of years. And in my study, the average millionaire, it took them 32 years to accumulate their wealth.
Right.
On average. The ones that pursued something they were passionate about, they shortcutted it to 12 years. Plus, they doubled the amount of wealth from the average millionaire in my study had $3.4 million in wealth. And the self-made millionaires, the ones that pursued something they were passionate about, they accumulated $7.4 million in 12 years. So, you want to be doing certain little things every day that get you those base hits. And eventually, over time, if you turn them into habits, they're going to create an avalanche of success down the road. There's just when you accumulate a core nest egg of money, it's much easier to make more money off of that money. When you have nothing, it's virtually impossible to be able to take risk or take advantage of opportunities. So when you do the right things and you get those singles every day and you start accumulating more and more wealth, you can buy real estate. You can invest in a side business. You can create other streams of income. But you have to do the little things every day to get there.
And be disciplined, too. I think we live in such a society now of instant gratification that we kind of overlook those small daily steps of just building it and small base hits, right?
Yeah, it seems, and that's part and parcel of the media. You can't pick up a paper without reading an article about somebody that won the lottery or some lottery that's gone up into the hundreds of millions of dollars, or or, the Mark Zuckerbergs who at, age 22 become billionaires, or,
Right.
you only hear about. They're so small in terms of the percentage of millionaires that they're almost invisible in the grand scheme of things. They're so out there on the tail end that you can't even see them. It's the bell curve, the 99% of millionaires out there. They're doing certain little things every day, and they're not having that overnight success. The reason the media pushes out those articles on overnight success is it gives the little guy hope, so that what they're really selling is hope. And unfortunately, it's misguided because that's the wrong type of hope. You want your hope to be invested in something that you're doing that's building a side revenue stream.
If you cannot pass on any money to your children and grandchildren, and you are only allowed to pass on 5 principles to them to build wealth, what would that be?
Read to learn would be the first one. Exercise aerobically would be the second one. Eat less than 2,000 calories a day when you're an adult. Only associate with upbeat, optimistic people, and avoid negative, pessimistic people. Those would be the 5 things that I'd want to pass along to my kids.
And what book would you recommend to my audience besides your 2 amazing books, Rich Habits, The Daily Success Habits of Wealthy Individuals, and Rich Kids, How to Raise Our Children to Be Happy and Successful in Life?
Well, of course, I'm going to be selfish here. I'm going to say my next book that I'm coming out with, Change Your Habits, Change Your Life, is going to be a really powerful book because it incorporates a lot of habit change strategies. But I would say other books would be How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think that's a powerful book. The other book is Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I think those 2 books are really good books. They'll teach you about 90% of what you need to know.
Thank you for sharing that. And you'd also mentioned in our chat before our interview that Rich Habits will be revised soon. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, we're beefing it up. One of my goals when I wrote Rich Habits was I wanted to keep it simple. I didn't want to include all of my research because I thought that would turn people off. But about 20% of the people that read Rich Habits were disappointed because, here we are talking about all the research data, and then they buy the book and there's no research in it. So what I've done with the second edition of Rich Habits is I've kept the storyline the same. I've goosed up the Rich Habits because, as I mentioned before we started the interview, I have over 300 really habits that I track. So I goosed it up to 30 the most powerful habits that I found, and also included the poverty habits in there. And I also have a 50-question test that you can take to find out if you're on the right path, if you're on the path to wealth or in the path to poverty or somewhere in the middle. And the last thing I've included in this book is the research summary. That's the 339 data points, the data that I tracked in my research. So you're not only going to get the story, the stories which are so powerful in the book, and the training program, which is now 30 Rich Habits. You're going to get all this other great stuff that's going to pull everything together for you.
Fantastic. And how can my audience learn more about you, your books, blog, the training, some speaking engagement opportunities?
Well, richhabits.net is my website. I post all of my research articles on there. I have a tip of the morning to you, which is also tied to my research. That's a tip I release every day. I have all of my media interviews, the big ones, on there, and there's dozens. And I also have, you can get free ebooks. I think there's at least 3 free ebooks you can download, and a couple of research articles that are not as big as like an ebook. They don't qualify as an ebook because they're only like 4 or 5 pages, and they're bigger than my blog research articles. So I have some research articles on there that you can download, and you can subscribe to the website, the blog, and get all of the new stuff that I write, my new content.
I definitely enjoy the tip of the morning articles that you send out every morning. They contain some really cool information and would highly recommend them to start your day learning something new. Tom, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. I'm a big fan of your work and research and your books. Your work provides so much value and provides actionable, empowering information that people can use to change their lives.
Well, thanks, MC, for giving me the opportunity to share this stuff with your listeners. I really do appreciate that.
Thank you for joining me today with my guest, Tom Corley from richhabits.net. Just a reminder that you can find all of our past shows, show notes, recommended resources, and join our community at cashflowninja.com. During the first 2 months of our podcast, we are giving away a $500 Visa gift card. All you have to do to get entered into the drawing is go to cashflowninja.com/iTunes and rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. Please help us spread the word of our show. If you feel that our show has provided valuable content and information, please share it with family, friends, and anyone that you feel will enjoy it. Until next time, live a life of passion and purpose on your terms.
You have been listening to the Cashflow Ninja with your host, MC Laubscher, the podcast empowering and inspiring people to discover how to generate their own income and manage, grow, and protect their own wealth in the new economy. Today's show notes and resources are available on our website, cashflowninja.com. This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. The information being presented and considered does not consider your particular financial objectives or situation, and it does not make personalized recommendations. This material is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified tax and legal advisor or other qualified professionals, and you should not use the information in place of a customized consultation with a licensed professional regarding your specific personal financial objective, situation, and needs. We believe the information provided is reliable, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, timeliness, or completeness.